survey, for those who don't know, provides the only source of comprehensive and affordable labor market and compensation data for the Canadian nonprofit sector, which sounds really, complex and great. We have been involved, CCVO has been involved with it for 2 years now. Peter Boland started the survey 19 years ago and has recently decided that he wants to move on from the survey, so he is involved with the 3-year transition process with CCVO. So last year we announced that we were doing this transition. We were involved more in the marketing piece. This year is the first year that we're actually doing the administration of the survey, and also we are producing the reports. So we're just in the middle of that. Organizations enter the data from June 1st to September 1st. How many of you got it in after September 1st? I'm looking at a few of you. We do let it lag a little bit, but we are at the point now where we've got the data in and we're doing the analysis. Organizations must participate in order to purchase a survey report. That's probably going to make a few of you feel bad because you didn't participate this year. I do have a workaround. We'll talk about it in a minute. Data that we get submitted. We have salaries, both from staff and contractors. We take human resource practice data, so vacation, vehicle allowances. I'll go into this a little bit more detail in a moment. Hours of work, CEO demographic data. One piece we did with CEOs this year, which we haven't done before, is look at their education level, and we're going to be reporting on that, and that's across Canada. And if that works well, we're hoping to do that for other positions as well, because we know that's something people have been asking for. And we do over 80 positions, and those positions come from information from you, from organizations that participate in the report. So all that is submitted by you, and we really appreciate the time and effort that you put into that. And then we turn around and report on that. Basically everything that you've submitted is reported in some fashion, and it includes the salary tables, which I know a lot of people are really excited about, but there are a lot of other pieces, as Janet alluded to, that are in the salary survey that you may want to take a look at. Our reports are issued by region. So we have 5 regions currently. We have British Columbia, we do Alberta, but we do distinguish between Calgary and Edmonton, so we're able to do that. We do the Prairies, which is Manitoba, Saskatchewan, we do Ontario, and we do Atlantic Canada. And we do have organizations who participate in 1 or more regions, if you're a national organization, or if you're an organization who has lots of chapters. Ronald McDonald House comes to mind. They tried to get all of their chapters this year to participate, so that they were able to use this as the benchmark for all of their chapters. So that's something you may want to consider if you work regionally with other organizations, to look at other regions, not just yours, if that is applicable. Our intention for 2016-17, so the next year, once these reports actually get issued, we're looking at contacting with more participants and users of the survey and getting some feedback. So that's a piece that really hasn't been done to this point. We're really excited about doing that because we know it's important to get feedback from participants and from users of the survey. We're looking at how people are using the reports, how people found the submission process. We're looking for a lot of input regarding new positions and other data that people want us to include. So, yeah. Oops. So participation was a little down this year. Last year we had 403, this year we have 369. I talked to a lot of people. My colleagues really were patient with me, as I sounded more like a telemarketer than a researcher for the last 3 months. But I did talk to a lot of people who said that they weren't going to participate because they felt that they weren't going to use the survey data, they weren't going to change their salaries and so on. That was really discouraging, disappointing, and for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's a collective effort when you put data in. Everybody benefits from the pool. So if you're not planning on purchasing a report, that shouldn't be your defining why I'm not participating. You should be thinking about, I benefited from someone's data last year, I need to help out people this year. So that's an important piece of why you'd want to participate. Another piece is it helps other peer organizations. So we talked about the idea of subsectors, and there actually is a way that you can get subsector data from the Boland survey, but you have to do a custom analysis with us. But if you are looking at wanting to have some sort of subsector analysis, you need to make sure that you and your peer organizations have actually participated to a level that we have enough data points. So that may be something you want to consider next year as you are debating about whether or not to participate. Who do you want to benchmark against, and how do you want to make sure that they get involved in that? And you being one of those people who gets involved is doing that leadership. We also have a piece where we look at salary comparison year after year, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. If you don't put your data in year after year, we can't add your data to that comparison. And so that is something that is really important for people to think about. Why am I participating? There's a lot of reasons beyond I'm not going to purchase a report, or I think I'm not going to do anything this year. And the final reason is, honestly, I can't tell you how many people phone me in November, December, who are all upset because they didn't participate, now they need a report. If you didn't participate, you can't purchase. So you need to be thinking long-term strategic. I actually am a chair of an organization who last year decided they wouldn't participate without my knowledge, and then we had to hire an executive director. Very frustrating to realize that you couldn't use that data. And I can't use that data if our organization didn't participate. So, the survey did start in Alberta, for those who weren't aware. So Alberta's always had a higher a higher number of participants that do participate. But we did have an increase in the prairies this year, so a 70% increase. The numbers are small in the other regions because there's not a lot of, there hasn't been a lot of contact yet. And that's one of the pieces CCVO is really excited about, is going out, making those connections and trying to develop the use of the survey in other regions. And it's a cart and horse kind of thing, you know, or a chicken and egg. We're not sure, getting people involved and then using the survey, and then getting people involved. But we are pushing that the more people that get engaged, the more regional analysis we can do. We're hoping to get to the point where, for example, we do track, in Ontario we track Greater Toronto area, so we're hoping to eventually be able to pull a survey out for that region, just like we do for Calgary and Edmonton. So the full list of positions is available online through our FAQ page. As I said, we've got over 80. They're detailed in different functional or program areas. So for example, we have Fund Development Manager, Specialist, and Associate. All have different job descriptions. So as Janet was saying, and Nadia was saying about the idea of looking at the job description, it's really important. Don't get stuck on the title. Look at what the job is actually doing. We have career counselors versus employment counselors. So again, what is your person actually doing as opposed to what their job title may be, or what should they be doing as opposed to the incumbent, what the incumbent is actually doing. We include specific roles. We have curators, we have pastoral care support or chaplains, we have ESL instructors. All of those come out of people who've asked us to include those in the data. During this data process, you get a chance to say, is this a good match? Is this a fair match? Is there no match? And we go back and we look at the fair matches and we say, what can we do to make them more effective and more impactful? We may contact you and say, why did you see this as a fair match as opposed to a good match? What do we need to do? We have historically split positions. So the Fund Development Manager, for example, maybe we need to split it into two and then, you know, make those matches more comfortable. Maybe we need to add something completely in this stream. And new positions are added, again, via that review or by participant request. And although we don't have a formal process right now, I've got a bunch of emails in my inbox from people who said, these are other positions that we have in our organization. Go ahead.
Sorry, you think go by the content of the position?
Go ahead, yeah.
Does it also include like the skills required? Like, you know, first aid?
It depends on the position. Some are more detailed than others, and again, as we hear more of that, we try and add more of that. But it really is about what the person is doing in that organization and what their role is in that organization. So things like the education level or may have first aid may not make it into that. That might be more about something in your organization. We try and focus on what is the role in the organization and how that looks for a broad group of organizations. Because again, we're trying to do this for hundreds of organizations, not just one. So, yeah, okay. Salary tables. So there are copies of salary tables in your package. They are, I should say right now, all of the data that I'm giving you is draft. It is subject to final review because I literally am still writing the reports as we speak. There's data on my desk being reviewed. So, but there are two salary tables that I wanted to show you to get a sense of how they look and what they look like. And those salary tables are for the Calgary area. So the salary table information includes things, again, on salary. So actual salary, both annual and hourly. And in the Boland survey, if you haven't seen it, you get separate tables for annual and hourly. We include information on bonus plans, targets, maximum awards, actual bonus awards. We include the total cash compensation, so the actual base salary and bonuses. We include pension contributions, so percentage of base salary contributed by employees or by employers, and the employee pension contribution. So again, we've got a lot of different pieces that come just in those salary grids. And those are the pieces people are most familiar with. Even myself, when I was working as an ED, those are the pieces I really looked forward to seeing when I got the Boland report, because that was where you were going to pick, this is where I'm going to be starting to pay from. But there's a lot of other information in the survey. Contractors, we also do contractor information. We do collect that on every position that we collect salaries for, because we know a lot of people are using contractors in different ways now. It's the first time I almost saw enough data to be able to report on CEO as a contractor position. So we know that people are starting to do things in different ways. The contractor, we just include the hourly, because of course contractors, they pay for everything else. But again, it's an important piece to be collecting, and we need those 3 data points in order to be able to pull that data together for you. So as I said, we do a lot beyond the salaries though. We do human resource practices. So we do hours of work, which is always a very confusing part of people trying to put information in the survey, because they always think it's the hours that the person is actually working as opposed to the hours that the organization considers full-time. So we'll be working some of that next year. Some people are working, that 35, 37 and a half, 40. We've got 44, we've got 32. So there's, it varies what people think is full-time. And so we do report on that, again, nationally and within your region. We look at flex days and what policies, and we talk about policies specifically. It's not the one-offs. It's not, my manager this year is really awesome and so they let us do flex days. It's, do you have a policy that says we can do flex days, and what does that look like? So we talk about how do people get flex days? Is it only management, or is it across the board for all staff? We talk about working from home. Again, is it my manager says yes because they like working from home too, but next year that'll change when my manager changes? Or is it we have a written formal policy that says we can work from home under these conditions? We have sick leave and vacation practices, and we distill those out for management and non-management, again, because we know that the policies may differ for some of the organizations. We talk about staff development and training, and we look at staff development and training budgets both from a global perspective and an individual perspective, because we know that that differs within organizations as well. Does anyone know what that means, global versus individual? Everyone's nodding, okay. We do health spending accounts and vehicle allowances by position. Not just you have one, but what positions are actually able to access health spending accounts or vehicle allowances. And vehicle allowances is not the per kilometer, it's the, you get something larger, usually it's a larger management position like a CEO that is able to, it covers your parking, it covers your vehicle usage, it's a bigger piece. And so we track that by position so that you're able to say, okay, if I'm going to be competitive with my market, there's a lot of organizations in my region that are giving that vehicle allowance to not just the CEO position, so I need to be aware of that when I'm hiring. So. We talk about benefits. We look at healthcare, so the basic stuff, extended healthcare, dental, vision. We look at travel, that's where the car allowance comes in as opposed to the vehicle allowance, that's the per kilometer piece. We look at transit passes, I love transit passes, that's one of the pieces I keep pushing at organizations. We look at company car, do you actually get to access a company car? We look at technology, do they pay for your smartphone, do they pay for your laptop, what does that look like? We look at personal support, things like coaching, counseling, and financial planning. And the information is shared for all employees, top executive only, and senior management only. So there's actually a chart in there that gives you all three. So again, you can be competitive. If you see that the bulk of the organizations in your region are providing laptops and smartphones, you might want to think, okay, is this something I need to do, or is this something I need to account for when I'm hiring? But this is another area where we add more as people tell us they do more. Right? Transit passes were not something we talked about 19 years ago. Transit passes are something that are more recent because more companies are starting to provide that as a benefit. So if you have a benefit, when you're looking at that chart that you don't see, it's good to contact us and say, hey, we've got this benefit, because then I can turn around and say, broadly, are other people using this benefit, and start to collect data on that as well. Right? So again, raw data, please don't take this as gospel. But in Alberta, we have 250 organizations who submitted data, so thank you to those who did get it in. It is down slightly from 2015, but in Calgary South, we have 150. So about 70% of organizations in Alberta that submitted data are from Calgary. So we've got a good pool to draw from. Both Calgary and Alberta and Calgary South, so we do Calgary North, Calgary South, because a lot of organizations in, say, Lethbridge will still look to Calgary as pieces of benchmarking, not necessarily the benchmarking, but they still want to know what's going on. They had the largest reporting numbers in the 1 million to 3 million category, so that's right there. So 72% of organizations that participated in the Boland survey this year in Calgary South fell into that budget category. So if you're over here in the 10 million to 20 million, you may want to think about, what do I need to do to get more people involved from that budget level if I want good data for next year, right? Or if you're over here, the same, right? I certainly have been pushing with smaller organizations who think they don't need to do this benchmarking or this compensation stuff to start submitting their data now, because they're going to grow and they're going to need to know how to grow, and doing this compensation piece is part of how to grow. In Calgary South, the average staff size, average as opposed to median, but I have both. And this is why. So the average staff size was 67.4, but the median was 30.5. So very different. And the average volunteer number was 849.9, but the median was 90. So again, very different. You need to know what you're looking for and what you're asking, right? So this is one of the big pieces that people are looking for, the CEO data. I know, again, a lot of small organizations only use Boland, or have historically only used Boland to do CEO, and everyone else just sort of, we'll figure it out as we go. Well, we want to change that. But CEO data is important. And this is the Alberta, this is all of Alberta, not just Calgary. And this is the 198 of the 215 organizations who submitted data for the CEO position. So that's position code 101 for those who are familiar with the survey. The CEO position is an independent, working in that sort of Carver model, hourglass moment. The range of salaries was quite large. We had everything from 48,000 to 303, 600,000. But again, the median was 122, just over 122,000. So that's why we've got so many over here and a few outliers to make it fun. And one of the pieces, again, we do is we benchmark against the annual budgets, right? So we had the annual budgets everywhere from 100,000 to over 96 million. So you need to have both. It's not just one dot. You got to put both on the grid, and you got to figure out where you are. Does it matter that the average salary is 130,000? Probably not. If you're over here, that's not going to make a difference. Or if you're over here, it's not going to make a difference, because again, you need to know where your organization is on this chart to see where others are benchmarking toward, right? Are we going to do this one?
Why don't you go ahead and do trends, and then we'll come back and do.
Okay, we're going to come back to that. Compensation trends. This is the fun part for me, because Boland has been, I've spent 3 months, 6 months doing the marketing, the administration, the getting people to put their data in, and I'm finally getting to the point where I can actually look at the data. So this is kind of the exciting where we can start to release some of it. Again, all being draft, but pretty exciting about what we're seeing. So compensation trends. So 61.9% of Alberta organizations, this is again Alberta, not just Calgary, reported increasing salaries in 2015. And I've been doing the other regions, and I'm seeing similar numbers. So organizations across Canada, I would say, pretty consistently did increase their salaries in 2015. So that's a good thing to see. And 73% are saying that they plan to increase salaries in 2016. So it's not that people are thinking, oh, well, we're in a recession, we're not going to increase. They're thinking, how do I be competitive? What do I need to do? Do I need to increase strategically? Now, we didn't ask which ones are you going to increase. It may be that they decide to increase 2 positions out of the 10 they hire next year. But there is that thinking that we still need to be competitive in some way. In 2015, the anticipated increase was 2.97. So people thought they would do about 3% increase. But the actual, when we came back to the numbers, was 3.3. So it was a little higher. And again, our 2016 anticipated increase is 2.98. So are we going to see it higher, or are we not going to see it higher? Now, some of these organizations were putting their data in, again in June, some were putting it in September. There's so many factors in this, but what we have seen historically, and again, I've gone back and looked through a couple of years of data, is that the trend is that we'll come in low, that organizations anticipate they're going to come in low at that 2.97, and then we see the average actually a little bit higher. So that's something to be aware of. Trends, turnover, and vacancy rates. Oh, this was fun to calculate as well. So every year we track, if you put in year after year after year your same position, so you have a CEO every year, we track from year to year what the actual average salary is from 2015 to 16 or from year to year, and the percentage increase. So this is my big plug for put your data in every year, because it really helps this chart specifically. We look at, it's only the organizations that put it in from year to year. So if you missed putting it in this year, your data won't be in as part of this next year. But when we have 3 or more data points, we're able to pull together some of this. So you're able to see that there's actually, this is the actual. Someone started here and ended there, and that's the actual percentage increase. So when we talked just a moment ago about the 3.3%, that's anticipated, but when you look at the actual as opposed to, I should say positional as opposed to actual, it does vary quite a bit. So you may want to look at this chart when you're thinking, what am I actually increasing as well? Because it may be that the 3.3 is a good number, but are we looking at, we need to increase different positions, different rates to be able to be market competitive, right? The data doesn't control for changes in personnel, so there will be slight variations. You will sometimes, we're internally debating right now about whether we should report on negatives or not. We haven't historically reported when something has become negative, because there's been an assumption that Peter has had that a negative, a decrease basically, is that the personnel changed and therefore their salary went down because you started at the lower end of the band as opposed to the higher. I'm arguing that that's not necessarily the case anymore, that there may be cases, and we know that it happens in the corporate world, so why wouldn't it happen in the nonprofit world necessarily, that someone may look at decreasing a salary in order to keep everyone employed. And I haven't heard differently, so I'm arguing that we may want to start including the negatives so that people can just be aware that that is happening as well. My jury's still out on that, so we'll see what happens when you get your reports as to whether I won the argument or not.
I think that's a good explanation.
Thank you, Peter. It's on tape.
In the corporate sector, we saw 10% rollback.
Exactly. And that's why, and especially because we're looking at the changes in Alberta. We want to say what do we need to do differently. So this may be something that you'll see. Turnover and vacancy rates are also calculated, and we include the turnover, how to calculate them. So if you're one of those data geeks, you can actually go and take our formulas and do it for your own organization and see how it compares to your region. Each report includes this year's rate and last year's rate for comparison, and it also includes all regionals. So you can see across regions how the turnover and vacancy rates are changed, in case that is meaningful for you, or in case you, again, need a reason to convince one of your peer organizations in another region to get involved. So yeah, please do that. We actually encourage people to take those formulas and calculate their own so they can benchmark against what we've got in there. I always do it wrong. Okay, so we have time to go back. There we go. We have time. So there were 2 charts that you should have received. Position 101, Program or Functional Manager. And position 112, Administrative Support 3. 105 and 112. Give me the hand. Do you want to do it? You want to talk? I can talk.
Do you want me to, or do you want to? Doesn't matter. We can do it together.
We can do it together?
Yeah. So we thought it would be nice for you to actually try utilizing, am I on?
It should be.
Yeah, it would be nice to try utilizing some of the great information from the Boland survey. So we have a bit of a case study that we thought we'd take you through and then just debrief. We have about 15 minutes, so we thought we'd do it. So let's try to apply some of the things that we've learned this morning as we talked about the importance of comp philosophy, program design, surveys, and come up with a range by applying some of this information. So what we'd ask you to do is take a look at the information that you have in front of you. What we'd like you to do, and before you apply it though, develop a comp philosophy, because we know that's all your starting point, right? And based on your philosophy, develop a salary range for each level of position and administrative guidelines for managing the salaries within the range. And since we have our comp specialist with us today, we can actually get her to help us after you guys have given this some thought at the end. And we'll debrief and then wrap up. Does that sound good? All right, so if you'd like to join the other tables, then please do so. We'll spend about 10 minutes and then we'll do a debrief. Do you want to add to anything on that, about the survey, about the information that they have relative to the survey as they do their exercise? Oh, you've got your tip. Yeah.
I guess the only thing I would add is if you have questions about how these grids are used, feel free to, pull me over and I can try and give you some perspective on it. Yeah.
Go to it.